What's cracking, y'all? Terry Warfield, and happy holidays to you. I hope you're doing okay today. If this is your first time on my channel, I like making camera content, filmmaking content, photography, stuff like that. So if you like that type of jazz, go ahead and hit subscribe. In this video right here, I want to show you how to take your photos from this to this. Now, funny story on how I came up with this video idea. A few months ago, I'm in New York, right? Me, CJ Knows Tech, me, C Kid Tech. We just out here swagging it, doing work, sitting in the hotel room, and we all on our computers, working on projects. And I'm sitting here on Lightroom, flying through photos, right? CJ like, Terry, how do you get your photos to look like that? Devin like, yeah, how do you do it? I'm like, bro, what? What are you talking about? Photos to look like what? And they were basically like, you know, the look. So I thought that would be a fun video to, I guess, take you through a crash course of editing one of my Instagram photos. Now, a few things, I'm not saying that the way I do things is the correct way or the perfect way to do it. It is how I choose to do things. There's an old adage that goes, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. This is one of those scenarios. If you find something in this video useful that I do, use it, apply it to yourself. The second thing, creativity is subjective, man. Remember that. So even though I might think a photo is perfect, you might think it's junk and vice versa. Now, a few prerequisites I want to go through before we actually get into editing this photo. Number one, take your time to take your photo before you get into your editing process. I don't care what you're using. You could be using your phone, you could be using a camera, whatever you're using, take your time. Think about your composition, think about your subject matter, try to expose it correctly, try to do all of that stuff, because if you get it right for the most part in the camera, then that means when you get it into the computer, you can spend the majority of your time on your creative process instead of trying to get the image right. And the second thing is, if your phone or camera supports it, shoot in RAW, man. And y'all are nasty. I'm talking about RAW format in your camera. To make it not so technical, a RAW photo is basically what the sensor sees. Now, I might make some slight adjustments, I might compress it, XYZ, but as a whole, most of the data, when it comes to your color data, exposure data, RGB, all of that stuff is still intact. And we need that. We need that to edit. Now, if your camera doesn't support RAW, you can use JPEG, but just know that JPEG is nothing like RAW. JPEG is basically your camera taking the picture, applying its own corrections, color grading and all that stuff in camera, and spitting it out in a compressed format that's easily shareable. Usually will make the average person happy, but that ain't what we want. If your camera offers it, use RAW. Now that you got your fantastic photo, that bomb photo, you ready to go ahead and edit, let's get it in the Lightroom. Now, real quick, you can use any software to do this. I just prefer to use Lightroom because it's Lightroom. It's just boss. Let's get it. All right, man. I really don't have no fancy desk setup like a lot of people have. I only got my MacBook Pro, so that's what we're gonna do. And I already got my image imported in the Lightroom, and just looking at it, it's actually not a bad image, right? It looks good, man. I intentionally underexposed it. I just want to throw that out there. The Sony a7 III is a beast when it comes to recovering like shadow detail, highlight detail. This was a challenging situation, man. You had a lot of shadow information down here. You had a lot of shadow information in the clouds. You also had some highlight information mixed in the clouds, and I wanted to keep my highlights. So the first thing I'm gonna do is actually, this image is a little bit cold to me, man. This is supposed to be like a sunset, and it's all like bluish. So I want to make it orangey. I want to make it like sunsetty. You know what I'm saying? So that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my temperature slider and just bring that up some. And you can see already how pronounced that change is. Let me show you the difference. That's easy. Next thing is I'm going to set actually my aspect ratio. For Instagram, let's go ahead and make this a 4:5 crop. Now, you can actually do like a rectangle inside of a box on Instagram. Me personally, that doesn't make sense. If they give me a whole square, I want to use the whole square. Some people are cool with like using just a rectangle. If that's what you like to do, do it. For me, I want to use the square. 4:5 is more like portrait, right? So it's going to give us a little bit of wiggle room on Instagram to move our photo left, right, up, down. Now let's go in here and set our exposure. Automatically, I want my highlights brought back down because this, it's kind of blown out. So let's grab our highlights and pull those back down. Obviously, my photo is super dark, so let's go ahead and bring my overall exposure up. Looking good, looking good. Now down here, it's a little dark, man. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring out my shadows, which, watch this. Now, even though I want my shadows lifted, I still want my dark areas to be dark. So I'm gonna pull my blacks back down some. And now you can see I got detail in my dark areas, my shadow areas, but it's still darker how I wanted it. Now I like to go ahead and set my clarity right off the bat. Some people like doing this on the end. The reason I don't like doing it on the end is because clarity a lot of times messes with your exposure. So you don't want to go through making all these exposure adjustments and then add on clarity at the end and then jack your whole photo up. So I like to push my clarity depending on the photo. I just like a little bit more punch. Let's go like a 25. I like that. And dehaze is also something I like to do before I get like into the meat and potatoes of the photo. Let's bring our dehaze up. I want to give it some punch. I like that. Vibrance I usually like to kick up to about 15. Saturation usually to like 5 or 6. Just these small changes, the effect is pronounced already. Let's keep it pushing. Now tone curve, we're gonna come back and do that later on in the process. I like to do that afterwards. I like to go and pick my colors first. Now typically as a whole, if you go on my Instagram, which my Instagram is Terry_Warfield, make sure you check that out. And by the way, if you like this video so far, go ahead and hit that thumbs up for me real quick. Make sure you subscribe. Back to the business. Usually I like to pull out yellows and greens. I just don't find those two colors too flattering for general photos, but I think in this particular photo they work well. I got this little group of trees and foliage and all this over here where this is nice and colorful. And actually I want to brighten this image up just a little bit more. My bad. All right, there we go. I want to bring my oranges up a little bit. So I'm going to use my color tab, HSL color. Don't matter which one you pick. If you pick the color tab, it still breaks it down by hue, saturation, luminance. If you go HSL, then it breaks it down by color, same thing. So I just prefer to use color. So I don't need to mess with my blue. Actually, I do want to mess with my blue because I have some blues up here in the sky. I just want to bring the saturation up and bring the luminance down just a little bit. I like it. Now let's go over to my orange. I'm actually going to push my oranges a little bit to the red. You'll see what I'm doing. I want to push them a little bit to the red, bring my saturation up just a little bit for my oranges now that I push those to the red. And the next question you probably say is, Terry, how do you know how to move this stuff around? A lot of it just comes with practice, man. A lot of it is trial and error. Once you edit so many pictures, you'll start to like eyeball it, like this is what I want and this is what I want. So in my yellows, I just want to boost my yellows just a little bit because we have a lot of yellow up here and some yellow in our trees. Now you can go into Photoshop and take this further, but I'm not going to do that. You can actually take it further in Lightroom too, but in the interest of time, just to make this like a crash course, I'm not going to get into all of that stuff. Just a quick edit so that we can spit this out, have us a banger right on Instagram. So I'm actually cool with the colors. So the next thing I want to do is add a vignette. Now, this is one of those things where it's a small thing, but it makes a huge impact on your photo. Now I'm drawing my attention right in here. So let's bring back up my comparison window. Boom. So yeah, now my vignette is kind of drawing my attention towards the middle of the picture. Now I want this right here to be just a little bit brighter. So I'm going to grab my circular tool right here, a radial tool, I should say. I don't know the names for half of this stuff. I'm just going to be honest. All right. And then we're going to invert that. Now, basically what I want to do is I want to bring the highlights up. I want it to look like a hot spot. Again, this is all a matter of taste. Saturation, I'm going to bring up some. I'm going to bring the highlights up a little bit more and put some contrast in there. And for me, this is like one of those small things you can do where it's not a huge deal, but just going back to the original image and looking at it without it, I like it with this. Matter of preference, man. You might not like it. I love it. I'm gonna leave it like that. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to take the graduated filter up here and bring a little bit more golden tone to my clouds. So I'm just gonna drag this down. I'm gonna bring my highlights up a little bit, and I want to make my clouds a little bit more orangey. So that's all. I still have some slight blue hues that we kind of messed with earlier. Let me go back and add a tone curve because that's one thing I want to do. I'm just going to add a basic S curve. Now with your S curve, if you want to, you can bring up the tail of it. And this is where your shadows are. And you can bring this up just a little bit. A lot of y'all like that matte look, you know what I'm saying, where it looks kind of like cinematic. This is how you do it. You see what that does? But for this photo, I don't want to do that. I really want that punchy look. There is my tone curve on and off. This is what we got. This is our beginning. This is our finished photo. Now you tell me which one do you like. You might still like the before, but me personally, I like the after. So let's go ahead and export this since I'm happy with it. And because this is a 24 megapixel picture, even though we already set our aspect ratio, I want to resize this to maybe like 5 megapixels for social networks. We don't need to mess with anything else because Instagram is not as finicky as Facebook, which we'll talk about Facebook in a different video. But export it like maybe 5 megapixels, 8 megapixels. Leave your resolution at 72 pixels per inch. For sharper for screen, I like to leave that standard. And boom, let's export it. And then all you got to do is take that to Instagram and let it rip, and then let the likes pour in. So I hope y'all enjoyed this tutorial. Again, I'm not saying my editing style is perfect. However, if it's something that you did like from it, take it, add it in your own edits, man. Add my tips to some of your tips to somebody else's tips, and come up with your own style on how you like to edit. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If y'all want more videos like this, let me know. I will do these things all the time. Make sure you subscribe before you leave off this video. Like, dislike, whatever you're gonna do. I really appreciate it. And make sure you drop comments. I really appreciate that. So that's all I got for you today. I'm out. Peace and chicken.